Okay, good morning from the United States to everyone in France. My name is Ryan Combs. I'm the Executive Director of the Research Triangle Regional Partnership. We're so glad to have you with us today for a brief webinar on doing business in the U.S. and doing business more specifically in North Carolina. I'm joined today by Dr. Laura Rowley. She's an Executive Vice President of the North Carolina Biotech Center. I'm also joined today by Sylvain Marcel, who is a senior consultant in the life sciences industry and a French expat. And then I'm also joined by an RTRP, my board member, Keith Burns, who's a managing law partner at Next and Pruitt Law Firm. Didier Cleese, who is the president of Gladstone International Development Consulting, and John Ganella, who is a tax advisor with Cherry Becker. And so we're here to give you a perspective on North Carolina and the Research Triangle region. And then we're going to open it up for discussion following our presentation. I do want to thank Anchoress for all the work they did to help organize this morning, specifically Florian and Thomas for all their hard work. Thank you, and we love our partnership with you as well, so thank you. I'm going to start out by trying to give you kind of a perspective on our region, and then following my comments, I'm going to turn it over to Laura Rowley from the North Carolina Biotech Center. And then Sylvain will speak about the French perspective on doing business here in the Triangle, and then we'll open it up to a group discussion with our other panelists if that works for everybody. Please keep your computers on mute, and if you have a question, feel free to put them in the chat box while we're talking, or you can just save them for our group discussion following the presentations. So I'll start out by mentioning the state of North Carolina. We're one of the fastest growing states in the country. We've got a population of roughly 10.5 million people. We've grown by 900,000 people over the last 10 years, and we're expected to exceed 12 million residents by 2030. North Carolina has the 11th largest GDP in the country. And as you can see, we're centrally located on the East Coast, halfway between New York and Orlando. 60% of the U.S. population is within a day's drive. That's roughly 179 people in the United States are within a 1 day's drive of North Carolina. We have a very business-friendly state for the third year in a row. Forbes magazine has ranked North Carolina the #1 state for business. And I mentioned we're centrally located. You can get to Washington, D.C. in 45 minutes on a plane, New York in an hour, Atlanta 45 minutes. Boston is about an hour and a half. We're very connected here. And speaking of airports, our airport is regularly voted as one of the top 5 large airports in the country. Post-COVID, we're back to 45 nonstop destinations. We had 61 prior to COVID. We're working our way back up. And we've got 11 airlines flying in and out of our airport every day. Our #1 carrier is Delta Airlines. They have 35% of our market share here in Raleigh-Durham, and you can see some of the places that they go nonstop, including a daily nonstop to Charles de Gaulle in Paris. That flight we're hoping to get back and operational by October of next year. So very excited for that flight to return. Because of the connectivity, we really have become a place for international business. We now have over 700 international companies located right here in our Triangle region. And all of those companies are contributing greatly to the growth of our state. I mentioned earlier that we're one of the fastest growing states in the country. And as you can see by this slide, if North Carolina were a country, we would have the 32nd largest GDP in the world. I wanted to give everybody a kind of a size comparison between France and North Carolina. From east to west in our state is about 875 kilometers. And from north to south, our state is roughly 378 kilometers. We have beautiful mountains in the west. They're nothing like the Alps, but they're beautiful. We have the highest peak on the East Coast, which is Mount Mitchell. And then we have the beaches to our east. We have roughly 518 kilometers of beautiful beaches in North Carolina. We have over 600 golf courses. The weather is perfect here. You can always tell people you can play golf basically 10 to 11 months of the year in North Carolina, a very mild climate. Also wanted just to kind of give you a snapshot of if you kind of compare France and North Carolina, and then more specifically our region with Lyon and Toulouse. You can see that we're roughly the same size. North Carolina as a state is basically the same size as Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, roughly the same amount of companies, same amount of jobs. And if you look, we have 350 French companies working in France. We also have quite a few French companies working here in the Triangle, including Biotech, which is probably the largest French company we have here. They have roughly 1,200 employees in the Triangle. We were fortunate before COVID to be in France with Alexandria, who spoke at an event for us. And at the event, he said, "From Durham, we serve the world." So we're very proud of the connections we already have with France, and we're hoping to increase that. So I'm going to talk briefly about our Triangle region. So if you look on the map, you can see that North Carolina there's 100 counties in North Carolina. So our partnership, we represent 12 of those 100 counties. We have roughly 2.1 million people in those counties, in our counties, and over 60 people a day are moving to the Triangle region of North Carolina. We were recently ranked as one of the top 10 markets for talent in the US. And we were also recently ranked one of the most educated regions in the United States. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we are the home of the Research Triangle Park. So if you look on the map, you'll see that we have these 3 Tier 1 research universities: Duke University, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and North Carolina State University. Those are our major research institutions, and they are very close, roughly a 30-minute drive from NC State to Duke or Carolina, and about a 10 to 15-minute drive from Duke to Chapel Hill. So very closely connected. But in the 1950s and 60s, we had people coming to these universities and then they were leaving, and we had a lot of brain drain. And so a group of business leaders and our government leaders got together and decided to create this research campus right in the heart of in between these 3 Tier 1 research universities. It's called the Research Triangle Park, and today it's the largest research park in the US. There's 50,000 employees working in the park, and we have over 250 companies. I mentioned that these 3 Tier 1 research universities, they're all doing roughly over, when you add them all up, they're doing over $3 billion in federal research every year. A lot of tech transfer coming from those universities, but they feed into a larger university system. We have 12 colleges and universities, 176,000 students, and 46,000 annual graduates. Roughly 65 to 70% of all our STEM graduates are staying in the Triangle after graduation. I mentioned earlier that we're doing roughly $3 billion in federal research every year at these 3 Tier 1 research universities. They all kind of do their own thing. Duke and UNC are more well known for the life sciences. They both have medical schools. NC State is more engineering focused, but they complement each other very well and work very closely together. And they're a great resource for our business community here as well. So our sectors, we're a very diverse region. Obviously, life sciences is what we're most known for. But over the last 5 years, our state has also seen the tech sector grow by 22%. And here in the region, the tech sector has grown at 17% over the last 5 years. We now have over 4,000 tech companies working right here in the Research Triangle, along with clean tech is one of our fastest growing clusters, and advanced manufacturing. I mentioned earlier that, life sciences is what we're mostly known for. We have over 560 companies here in the Triangle in the life sciences. I mentioned Biomerieux. Grifols is a Spanish company as well, and then GSK, 3 of our major employers, 24,000 employees working in the life sciences, and our gross regional profit every year is about $9 billion. We've had over $2 billion in foreign direct investment into the region as well. Here's a map of some of the life science companies here in the Triangle region, and we were recently ranked as the 5th largest life science hub in the United States. I mentioned some of the announcements recently. We've had, and since COVID alone, in the life sciences sector, we've had 5.14 billion in new investments. These are three of the larger announcements we've had in just the last year alone. And then another kind of a convergence of all the things happening in the life sciences. We also have a large ag tech cluster here. We're a home of BASF, Novozymes, Syngenta, all are three very large players. North Carolina State University is also one of the top agriculture technology schools in the country. They're getting ready to open up a new plant science initiative, $150 million investment from the state of North Carolina that will contribute greatly to the research being done and the growth of the ag tech cluster. And as you can see, quite a few, over 100 ag tech companies here call the Triangle home as well. And then one thing that we're really thriving on as well is being able to attract venture capital to the Triangle. You can see in 2020, we raised $3.4 billion in investment. A large percentage of that was in tech and obviously in the life sciences as well. And then we have a tremendous ecosystem for startups. We have great co-working spaces. We've got great incubators and accelerators, and we're really quickly becoming known as a startup hub. A lot of that has to do with our universities and our ability to attract venture capital into the region. And in 2018, we were ranked by Inc. magazine as the third best place in the US for starting a business. And as I mentioned earlier, over 65% of our STEM graduates are now staying in the region. And the average age of our average age is just 36 years old here in the Triangle. This was just released by LinkedIn about a week ago. During the December 2019 and May 2021 interval, Raleigh was listed as the third best city for fastest growth in proportion to population size for startups. So very proud of that statistic. And just a couple of our accelerators. This is the Alexandria Launch Labs that's focused 100% on ag tech. And then right down the road, we have a Biolabs North Carolina, which is an accelerator for the life sciences. So those are just two examples of some of our great assets here in the Triangle. From a cost of doing business standpoint, if you look, you can see we're way under the national average with some of our competitor markets. So the cost of doing business is very cheap here. And then Class A office space rental rates, if you look, you can see the average rates in San Francisco, New York, Boston, and Austin, and you can see where we rank on that chart. So it's a lot cheaper to do business here. It's a lot cheaper to rent space in this region. And then I always love showing this slide. This is the cost of living comparison. If you look at what an average home price in San Francisco costs, it's about 1.4 million. In New York, it's 652,000. And then in Raleigh, it's about 290,000, and in Durham, it's about 257,000. And then the apartment rental rates, you can see what it costs to rent an apartment in San Francisco and New York, and what it costs to do in Raleigh and Durham. So we're way under the average of our competitor markets. And then lastly, I'll leave you with this. So we work closely with a lot of our partners in the region. We're very proud of the French American Chamber, of our relationship with them. They have a very prominent voice here in the Triangle. And then just a couple of years ago, we were also designated a La French Tech hub here in the Triangle. So we've got great French connections here in the Triangle. My organization tries to be the one point of contact. If you have questions about our region, if you want to do business here, you can reach out to us and we can connect you with everyone. And so one of my colleagues is Laura Rowley from the North Carolina Biotech Center. We're very fortunate to have a biotech center in North Carolina. And I want to turn it over to Laura to talk a little bit more about the life science sector here in the state of North Carolina.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Ryan. And it is a pleasure to be here virtually with you all today. The North Carolina Biotech Center is a unique entity that is headquartered in Research Triangle Park, but we actually serve the life sciences industry of North Carolina across the entire state. And we are unique in that the services that we provide, the programs that we have really span the entire sector. And for us, life sciences it includes a lot of what Ryan has outlined in terms of human therapeutics, ag bio, med device, precision health. So while we're called the Biotech Center, we really are thinking about life sciences more broadly. And then for our programming, it is along the entire continuum from the ideation that occurs at our universities with grant programs to support that type of conversion and exploration, through loan programs that are supporting North Carolina-based startups. If you have a French company that relocates to North Carolina, you would be eligible for those programs, as well as different types of support and information for companies that are in the life sciences that are trying to understand more what it would be like if they were to relocate and grow in North Carolina, what resources they would have access to, the appropriate introductions. And we have a phenomenal team that I'll talk a little bit more in a minute here that can help you where you're located now, and then have additional support if you are coming for a visit or exploring the opportunity to base your business in the Triangle or in North Carolina more generally. Could you go to the next slide, please, Ashley? As I briefly referenced earlier, we have a lot of information, and I think information is really powerful. We keep a close finger on the pulse of everything that's going on in North Carolina's life sciences ecosystem, and you can then leverage that to explore opportunities for partnerships, collaborations, potential clients, and your business development activities. We refer to our research team as our life science intelligence team, and I have listed here all sorts of services that they provide. One that I want to make particular note of is our company directory. We right now classify 775 life sciences companies in the state of North Carolina, with about 75% of those in the Research Triangle region that Brian was describing. And by looking on our publicly searchable web interface, you can explore and get to see who your peers may be, who potential collaborators may be, and then you can work with our team to do a deeper dive into that. Next slide, please. Another way that the Biotech Center can be a partner for companies that are not currently in our market is the availability that we have to provide space. This right here is actually a portion of our facility that's located in RTP, and on the 3rd and 4th floors there, we have turnkey office space that is available for individuals that are not yet in North Carolina, and it provides a prime location for you to identify and determine whether or not it's a right fit for you at this time. And then it also provides great connectivity, professional working environment, and just that place to grow even whenever you've made the decision. If you are waiting for your space to be developed and you want to grow your team in the interim, you can do that at our facilities. And then the rest of our staff, we're just downstairs or across the hallway and can provide that additional supplemental support to network and further build out your community in North Carolina. Next slide. And to that end, we do have a number of, we call them exchange groups, but established networking groups that are focused on all different areas of the life sciences. Listed here are just a few. One that's particularly active is our biomanufacturing process development group, that given the size of our biomanufacturing biopharma community in the state, they have a lot that they do to bring together students in the area, existing employees, and it's a great place to network with those that are like-minded. We also have a forum that's focused on regulatory affairs. Women in Bio is another group that's particularly active. All that to say that we know and recognize how diverse life sciences is in North Carolina, and we have all sorts of different kind of niche groups to help you find your exact home, and whether, again, that's to the end of connecting with collaborators, finding potential new employees, or anything and everything in between.
All right. Thank you so much, Laura. I appreciate it. Now I want to ask Sylvain to come on. Sylvain's going to kind of give you a French perspective on doing business, especially in life sciences here in the Triangle. So I'll turn it over to Sylvain.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I'm happy to share my experience here. Hi, everybody. So I'm Sylvain Marcel. I've been developing therapeutics for about 12 years in the industry, starting at the bench and moving up to a vice president position. I was born in Le Mans. I did my education in France, the UK, Germany, and I moved to the US in 2009. So about 12, 13 years ago. And I jumped pretty quickly into starting a biotech company with a small group of people in Texas originally. And after about 10 years of running the business, I decided to move to the RTP region, mostly because I wanted to be in the heart of a real biotech hub. So today I do consulting. I consult for about 3 biotech companies, one being located in France at the moment. And so really what attracted me here is that we have all the components of life sciences here. And I know Ryan covered a few of these, but there's really a few places in the US and in Europe as well, where all this is a combination of really a strong academic medical research, like Ryan mentioned, and he covered, how much money these universities are actually bringing in grant money. But it's also a place where you have all contract manufacturing, contract research organization, clinical research, network of incubators, which is very important for companies to start. That's not necessarily easy to find in other places. Another example is the universities here are actually spinning off about 30 to 40 companies every year. So these companies they need a place to go, and the Research Triangle Park really put a network to address all these needs. That's really why I think I wanted to come here and kind of help some of the companies I work for to start, basically. So I really appreciate that network of companies. That is basically a network of very small companies to very large pharma. We mentioned GSK, bioMérieux, but Pfizer, Biogen, and others are also established here. They actually keep investing in the area, which is very interesting. So to me, it's a very nice mix of traditional pharma, but also new technologies. Gene therapy is actually very big here. Agriculture technology, animal health, medical device diagnostics, and all together with a set of services that kind of bring this. And that's really the big advantage of a park, is that you have all these components all together. So I also noticed, I moved here about a year ago, and I'm currently looking for space for some of the companies I work for. And I also noticed that real estate companies are actually investing here. They are buying new buildings, old buildings, renovating them for life sciences. They're opening offices, lab space, manufacturing space to accommodate all this growth. And it's only starting, I feel. So it's very active. And honestly, I only find other places like Boston, San Francisco, San Diego doing the same. But like Ryan mentioned, they're also a lot more expensive for businesses and people. Actually, one of the reasons why I moved to RTP and not California is because of the cost of living. And I feel like others are doing the same. So another thing that I think is very important to mention is convenience. Again, that was mentioned a little bit before, but when starting businesses, I feel like this is very important. Being very close to your collaborators, the universities, the airport is right in the middle. You can drive around very quickly from places to places. You have a direct flight to Paris, to London, which is very nice. And convenience is very important when I think you do business with people, and you have to keep your connections. And finally, I think that's also important, and that's something that we have been looking also in Europe, and not always easy to find as well, is accessing trained people when we hire, and when we hire quickly, or we hire different type of people at different levels. I sometimes spend 6 months to hire someone in Texas, while here it's rather easier, faster, because you have this pool of people already here. And like Ryan mentioned, people keep moving into the area. Sometimes trying to get away from California or Boston because of the cost of living and looking for another place where they can do the same. So I think this is very important when you move a business or you start a business, is having quick access to talent. And students, again, are very well trained here and they want to stay. So I think the RTP, the park here really did a great job at putting this pool of trained experts together. So I just wanted to mention that because, again, I moved around quite a bit, the UK, Germany. I actually worked in Switzerland a bit as well. But again, finding all these pieces was never very easy. Since I moved here, I basically found everything that I need. It's just there, it's convenient. So this is my experience so far. It's doing great. When I hear every day the amount of investment coming in, companies moving in, I feel like the region is going to continue to grow really fast. So I encourage everybody to look into the area for that.
Thanks so much, Sylvain. I'm going to open it up for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, or you can raise your hand on here as well. But I wanted to start with DDA. DDA, you and I have worked together. You've worked to help companies locate here in the Triangle region. And I just kind of wanted, after hearing what we've talked about, is there anything else that you'd like to add that makes this an attractive place to do business in the U.S.?
Yes, thank you, Ryan, and thank you to give me the opportunity to say a word here. And of course, I'm always very happy and pleased to participate to that type of webinar. I could add, what could I add? Because I think Sylvain said a lot of interesting things in remind everybody that do not know already the region or all the greatest points that he has mentioned are absolutely true, for sure. In a brief presentations on my side, as Ryan said, we have had the pleasure to work together, and I'm sure we'll have the pleasure to work again together in a short future. So I'm the president of Gladstone. It's an international development company, especially dedicated now in the US and for the French company who wants to develop their business in the US. I've personally created, installed, run, and developed business for French companies or European companies since 20 years. And I've had the opportunity to go in many different states in the United States. And I should say that in the last, let's say, 5 years, definitely the North Carolina, and especially the reception and the way we have been received in the RTRP in between Durham and Raleigh in those last years were absolutely what any companies, and especially French companies, may expect when they want to develop their business in the United States. You talked about the climate, and for sure the climate is perfect. It's perfect for weather. It's perfect to play the golf and having a daily nice living, but it's a perfect business climate. And it's very important, as you know, as many people know here, because I think most of them are French as well. We really do appreciate that. And when I say climate, is on all the good points that Sylvain has mentioned and developed. So I won't come back on that, but again, absolutely, I'm aligned with him. And I would just emphasize one thing, just to make sure that for any French companies that will come and be received, and believe me, you will be absolutely adopted as a US company or as a French US company when you will arrive in RTRP, especially by these people from the RTRP, from Ryan and his team. We just have you will just have to make sure that you will correctly translate your French successful way of doing business into a US successful way of doing business. That's more or less my job, but that's very important. And everything is ready to receive you in RTRP, that's for sure. You just have to have the good preparation, the good pre-analysis, the good plan, and the good pre-installation before going there. Once you have that, And if you have any question, I would be more than happy to answer those questions, even in English or in French. I know Ryan can also explain in French.
Yeah.
Maybe not as fast as me, I don't know, not yet. but I would be more than happy to help, and definitely for the one from French companies who want to set up something or launch something, again, for French successful business into the United States. Among many other states I've been working with, North Carolina and the Triangle is certainly one of the best places to be actually now.
Thank you, DDA. And if you're looking to expand to the US, DDA is a great person to help you with that. I mean, he knows the US market very well, and he was just a pleasure to work with. So I really appreciate you being on the call. I want to kick it over to Keith for just a minute. Keith, do you want to just talk briefly about, if you are an international company and you want to do business in the US, kind of what are the steps to take to begin that process, and how hard is it, and all of those things?
Certainly happy to help, and thanks for including me today, and thanks to each of you for being here. So there are really two questions there that Ryan's posed. The first is, when do you need to be a US company? And then the second is, if you elect to be a US company, what are the steps? So the question of when you become a US company really depends on the scope of your activities in the United States. If your initial activities are really limited to evaluating the market, maybe hiring someone locally to help with sales, and not doing much more than that, then probably you can delay becoming a US company until your operations in the United States grow. At some point, your operations in the United States will grow, and at the point that you have a decision maker in the United States, and at the point that you have research or manufacturing facilities here, as you've grown, you will want to become a United States company. There are a number of tax considerations related to that that go into the planning of what kind of United States company you will be, and how that will be structured. And the detail of that really goes beyond what we should discuss today. But once you've reached a decision about forming an entity in the United States, it is remarkably simple. In fact, many times people from other countries don't believe me when I say that it can be done in an afternoon, but it is absolutely true that you can form a company in the United States in an afternoon. Particularly here in North Carolina. And the formation is as simple as preparing a document that is typically no more than 2 or 3 pages, and filing that document with the North Carolina Secretary of State. In some instances, companies elect to create their new United States entity in another state, and the time for creation in those other states varies, but typically they're not going to exceed more than a week or 2. So a very easy path forward there. I'm happy to answer specific questions about that if you'd like, or Ryan, if I failed to cover something you had in mind, please let me know.
That's great. And you mentioned tax, and I want to bring John in. Just is there anything you want to follow up with? And basically, why don't you give us a little bit about some of the tax advantages of what North Carolina provides?
Certainly. Thanks, Ryan. And thank you for having us. My name is John Gannell. I'm a tax partner with Cherry Beckert, a Southeast regional firm, and I'm located here in Raleigh. And from a tax perspective, a local tax perspective for North Carolina, it's a very attractive location for investment for any company, especially foreign companies. North Carolina, excuse me, has a corporate income tax rate of 2.5%. Which is one of the lowest in the country. So most of our foreign investment do so working with advisors like Keith through the formation of a C corporation, a subsidiary, to do business in the United States. And that corporate tax rate of 2.5% is well below the roughly 5.5% average for the United States. And then from an individual perspective, where our clients are also sending individuals to work, the individual income tax rate in North Carolina is a flat 5.25%, which is also very competitive as you look at different states that you could consider for investment. The other thing that North Carolina doesn't offer, based on the amount of investment a company may be making in starting a business in North Carolina, are other local tax incentives. And certainly would be happy to answer those. Those can get very nuanced, but the key there is that you have to make the application to potentially qualify for those in some cases tax holidays at a local level. You need to do it before you've actually signed a lease or made a commitment to be in North Carolina. So very early on in the process, as you're talking with Keith or another advisor, that you'd want to start having those conversations and look into potential tax advantages that would be specific to your investment here in the Triangle or in North Carolina as a whole.
And adding to John's comments there, another one of the ways that the Biotech Center is able to provide support is that we work hand in hand with those local economic developers and our State Department of Commerce to ensure that you don't have any of those missteps, like signing a lease before you fully explored whether or not you're able to take advantage of some of these programs. And so for life sciences companies, we serve as a liaison to help our local partners understand your technologies and some of the special considerations, and then for you to connect with the right people at the right time.
Great. Pierre put in the question box, what about the FDA? Pierre, do you want to elaborate on your question? What specific question you have about FDA?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, for a French company going to the US is a medical company is always the question about the FDA, about having your product approved. But then my understanding is that you need a representative and then an importer or primary importer. I don't know exactly what the word is. So what is your experience with that?
Laura, do you want to start?
So if you could, I'm sorry, if you could repeat one more time kind of the key crux of what you're asking, that would be helpful.
Yeah, how does your organization can help with the FDA general procedure? I mean, do you have FDA offices in the region, or how does it work?
Sure. So as Sylvain tried to include in his comments, we do have a lot of diversity in terms of the expertise in our area. And one of those is expertise in regulatory affairs, which will be part of the considerations in your engagement with the FDA. Within my organization, we can provide ample referrals to appropriate consultants to guide you through the regulatory approval process. Similarly, in thinking about your facilities, depending on what type of work you're doing, you may need to be thinking about CLIA certification, meeting and achieving the milestones for good manufacturing practices for your facility. So a lot of it from our perspective would come in the form of providing recommendations to appropriate consultants that are active in the specific areas. Does that start to answer your question?
Yep. Yeah, no, that's good. Yep.
What I can add to this, I have not imported or exported drug products that were approved yet, but to deal with the FDA for clinical trials, for example, IND filing and so on, you don't necessarily need to have a presence in the US. A lot of actually European companies file with the FDA and have INDs with the FDA without having an office in the US. And the FDA also inspect facilities abroad as well. So I think the only concern maybe here is when you want to import drugs that have been approved and manufactured outside of the US and import this into the US. And that's a slightly, I guess, a slightly different question in terms of who to ask for. But I don't think there's a lot of roadblocks in getting communications with the FDA for developing a drug product. So usually they would be very happy. Now the import permit concept, I'm not too familiar with.
If I can add, no, go ahead, Laura.
I was going to add that you'll find that the community here is very well connected. So if you were to come to me and I was not the right expert, I would refer you on to the appropriate organization or individual. And I think that you see this the same kind of regardless of what entry point you come in through. Regarding trade, one of our other partners is the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, and they have individuals that can provide support with how to access our market in that way, in addition to adding a physical location here.
Correct. And what I wanted to add is what I said. That you need a preparation and you need a plan before coming, because we can definitely on the field. I mean, I'm familiar with that. You cannot directly answer your question, Pierre or Philippe, I don't remember. We cannot directly answer your question. We need to see exactly more what you want to do, what kind of drugs, what kind of typology of business you want to import in the United States. And based on that, again, it's necessary to pre-organize the things and to have a slight or single person knowing the people there, to come and meet with the right guys, right people that RTRP can help in finding, but they cannot. You cannot be subscribed to you and your plan in your business. So it's a necessary preparation and anticipation on what you want to do, what kind of product, and based on that, we can go there and we can see and have the right people that will come to you and explain exactly what you need to do. Because based on FDA, it could take maybe a 3 to 6 months, in the best case, 2 to 3 years at the maximum.
Okay, thank you.
I believe we have a question.
Yes, I had a question about, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question was not about drugs, but about medical devices. If for clinical trial, it's possible to import medical device from Europe, or would you recommend from the US?
Who wants to take a stab at that question?
By the way, to give you some more information, it's a custom-made oral device.
My take on this, without really knowing the process, is that in the US, clinical trials are still considered research, which has there's a little difference here with clinical trials in Europe, for example. So importing a medical device for clinical trial, if it's to be used in the US, I don't know exactly, again, the import permits, but I don't see anything from the FDA to stop this from happening.
Okay.
We sometimes have clinical trials that are in different countries at the same time, like a phase 2 or phase 3, and usually there is no issues with doing clinical trials abroad, as long as you have the proper, shipping and custom documents together with the material you are transferring. So it's more like a custom question, I believe, but I don't think the FDA has any issues with getting a clinical trial ongoing with a product made outside.
Okay. Thank you.
I would mention from a tax perspective there, if you're importing tangible items, whether it's for clinical trials or the sale of tangible goods into the US, while Keith or I could talk about at what point you create a permanent establishment for income tax purposes in the United States, it's much easier for a foreign corporation to create a sales and use tax obligation in the United States. The Wayfair case in the United States, which changed the way that states were able to require the remittance of sales and use tax in local jurisdictions, North Carolina and other states, has changed. So a foreign corporation can be subject to requiring to withhold and remit sales and use tax, even without having a physical presence in states in the United States now. So if there's anybody on the call who has sales into the US, even though you don't have a foreign subsidiary investment in the US, it is certainly an issue worth following up and having a discussion with, just to make sure that you're in compliance prior to making an investment in the US.
I'll have a company in the US. We're currently setting it up.
So one thing you would want to look at is depending on if there's a change in title, if there's a potential sales and use tax implication, and that would come down to the facts and circumstances. Often for clinical trials, there are exemptions at the state level, but it's something you'd want to look into.
Okay, thank you.
If you don't already have a clinical research partner that is helping with your trials in the US or elsewhere, that's another area where we can provide recommendations. And within our region, we have a really nice group of CROs that range in terms of the types of indication that they specialize in, the phase of clinical trial, and so on. So there are lots of good partners if you are needing that support in understanding how to do that in our market.
Okay, well, I'll keep that in mind. And I will ask my partners where they are right now. Thank you.
Okay, we've got another hand raised. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Is it Michael?
Yeah, it's correct. Yeah. Hi,
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot for organizing that. We've been in touch earlier this year. So I'm from Macropep, so South France, Toulouse-based startup, basically developing peptides for agriculture. And it's coming to one of the questions of Pascal Thomas as well on the chat. I have basically two questions. So I'm developing at the moment the business plan to go to the US. And my first question is that I have a few question marks. Who should I contact at your hand if I had questions about, I don't know, business plan numbers, about cost, about things like that? And the second part, which is related to that, is that we need something really specific, which is glasshouse space, greenhouse space. I know that there is a very strong shortage of that kind of space in the US at the moment. How are you placed at RTP regarding that particular asset, if I can call it that way? Thanks.
Well, you had two questions. Keith and John, do y'all want to talk about the first question about the business plan for setting up here? And then I and Laura can help talk about the greenhouse space.
I'll hop in on the business plan, but I want to make room for John on that topic also. There is no requirement for a business plan for organizing a company. The Secretary of State for organizational purposes doesn't inquire about anything about exactly what you will do or how you will finance it or how you will make money. Those are, however, obviously very important questions for the success of your business, and they're going to involve issues about the local labor force and what local labor rates are, and about lease rates, and about all the things that go into the cost of doing business, and then also obviously about the prices at which you'll be able to sell your goods and services. And for that, I will need to find, or you'll either need to have someone here in North Carolina or someone researching from France to help work through those things. John and his team, I'm sure, can help with the accounting piece of building a very solid pro forma that is the business plan with the income and expense items. I'm happy to speak further on that, but that may begin to answer the question. I hope it does.
And piggybacking off of what Keith had mentioned, we often assist with the tax implications of the business plan, not only including US taxes, but for intercompany transactions, the transfer pricing, making sure that the interactions between the foreign parent and the US subsidiary, in the case that you're mentioning, that those meet a arm's length transaction, both from a French perspective and from a US perspective, which, while similar in the way that they are approached, are not exactly the same. So, which figures into your cost of doing business in the US.
Michael, can you give us a better idea on timing for when you would need greenhouse space here or in the US?
Well, that's a bit early to tell, but I would say mid next year,
Okay.
ballpark.
So I've put in the chat box Alexandria's Launch Labs. They have about 10,000 square feet of greenhouse space. They're building additional space right now. I actually just toured it yesterday, and it'll be online shortly. Our universities also have limited amounts of greenhouse space, but that you can certainly go and rent from the university. Do you know how much space you would need?
I guess to start with, probably, sorry, it would be square meters, but I think it's time 10, so 2,000 square feet.
Okay. All right.
Roughly.
That's great. And we're also involved in working on getting some new greenhouse space built. And so I can send you some information about that for you to take a look at as well. But you're right. I mean, it's an issue for the entire United States. It's people are very reluctant to build spec greenhouse space until they have a client. And then if the client realizes it's going to be 18 months to build, then they figure out they can just build it themselves. But Alexandria, like I said, has done that. They have spec greenhouse. And so it's a great solution for you if you need to get in and get greenhouse space. But I will follow up with you for sure about some other options for you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I can comment on this as well, because I'm actually also working in AgTech, and I've been looking for greenhouse space very recently too. And I would recommend also the Alexandria Group, because as an incubator, it's like an all-inclusive kind of kit that they provide for you. And I don't think you need to have a US company to enter the incubator. Having said that, the space can go very quickly too. Yeah. So I would recommend to communicate with them earlier than later, so that you're on their radar and you can eventually book your space early.
And Michael, they also have a venture fund, Alexandria does. So if you're looking for investment opportunities, that's a great resource as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I knew about the VC side of that, but I know that they are real estate, but I wasn't sure exactly what they were up to. So it would be great to have an update. Yeah, clearly.
Great. All right, we have time for one more question, Pascal. Did we answer your questions for AgTech, or do you have additional questions for the vertical farming?
Hi, thank you for this webinar. It's really very helpful. So today we have already someone in Austin, Texas, looking at the market. We are about to close a big round A funding. So the next after that will be expansion, and our first market will be the US. So we are looking not the main city in the US. We don't want to target as all the other vertical farms, New York and San Francisco or Los Angeles. We don't want to be in those regions. So that's why cities like Raleigh or this kind of city and area are really on top of our list. One of the questions would be about human resources and the way we can either hire people within the market, which should be it could be a little bit complex. And the second question will be about we need to train the people. We are based in the south of France. We have our facilities right here in the south. Climate is also quite good. But what we're looking is also the way we can hire in the US, having the people trained in the south of France, having 1 or 2 people moving to the US. And I know at the moment, moving people from France to US, internal visa is absolutely very complex. So I don't know what's your views on that. We don't want to have a lot of French people moving to the US, but at least we need 1 or 2 people there.
I'll start with the last part of the question. I think, and DDA can attest to this about our community college system here. One of the solutions you could look at is actually having someone from the community college learn how you want to train the employees for the US, and then the community college will in turn train the employees. So you won't have to fly a bunch of people over to France. You could fly one, train them up on how you want to train the people in the US, and work directly with our community colleges. That's just one piece of advice I have. DDA, do you want to add on to that?
No, that's exactly that. That's so I've had the experience to develop this for another French company based in France, in the south of France. And And the deal was quite simple from the university in Raleigh was to say, okay, listen, let us know what you need exactly. Let us send you people in France, teachers or the people to be taught actually, and learn about your company, about what you want exactly. And bring back everything home in North Carolina to make sure that they can teach correctly the people afterwards, the one you would hire or the one you would specifically hire afterwards, coming from the university or not. It's a kind of equivalent. Sorry, Ryan, I will switch in French quickly to make sure I would be understood. C'est un peu l'équivalent d'un IUT chez nous. Ça dépend de la formation précise des gens que vous allez souhaiter, mais ils ont cette capacité de financer ça, de financer soit des professeurs qui vont venir en France comprendre ce que vous voulez exactement et le rapporter aux États-Unis, ça c'est dans le cadre d'une formation un peu plus générale et étendue, soit éventuellement financer des personnes qui vont venir des États-Unis se former en partie chez vous. Donc il y a des partenariats que pour faire avec le Biotech, avec les universités qui sont là-bas à Raleigh. Sorry, Ryan.
I couldn't have said it any better.
It's a specific word in France, so we can translate in English.
Well, yeah, I appreciate, but I just spent 5 years in Canada, so I think
okay.
I just moved back from Canada to France. That's why I moved to the south of France, not being in the cold part of the French territory. No, the question about training is we need to build a lab, and then we are building farms. Building a farm, it's a factory. So we need to at least not train in long term. We will need people on long term when you need, in this case, universities. And I would say in the kind of training, we need to have a short training about the people to understand what we're doing, so they can be up and running very quickly. So it's a 3 or 6 months, 3 to 6 months training. It's not a long time, and we need people who are already professionals. But we need to see they need to discover what we're doing and replicate what we have already here in the US market.
That type of information.
So after the question of, sorry, go ahead.
Please continue.
Now the question about the visa will be if we need to have at least, I would say, a minimum one person. I think at the moment it's quite impossible to have a visa to move people. So the question is, how long do we need? How long it takes, so we can anticipate a little bit this part.
I mean, visa, maybe I can answer you because I've had the experience and during the COVID, and one is actually ongoing on my side. And it's to, I mean, as long as you have the sponsor, and the sponsor could be the university, for instance, the Biotech in or some other university in Raleigh or next to RTP. It's really fast. I mean, the last person I've organized the visa there, sent the request. He received the letter in May, mid of May. Sent the request to the U.S. Embassy in France, in Paris, beginning of June. The appointment, you need an appointment with the embassy. Was planned initially end of August, and finally we simply asked to have it as soon as possible. And the meeting is tomorrow. It's Thursday, Thursday the 1st of July. So tomorrow that person will have the meeting in the embassy here, and they will be able to leave before end of July to United States to go for his training. So, and in both ways, it's quite easy and simple. The only thing is to get the sponsor, and even with the COVID, you see, you can do things quite quickly. And the visa is you have different type of visa, but you know that. So here that was a kind of G1 or G2, I don't remember exactly, but it's a G1, extended G1 that the person can work as well, teach and work. So they can receive money, can even work at the Starbucks if he wants among the training. So it's quite open. It's really fast.
Okay, that's a good news, because in our mind it was very, very long. So
of course, depends.
Because I know in Canada at the moment, I have many friends who are still there in Canada, and I was talking to someone who says the period with the COVID was absolutely awful. So it can be more than 2 years now to get the permanent residency, so the green card.
Yeah, but that's also what was heard and said with United States beginning of the year. But finally, the facts were a little bit different.
Okay, that's absolutely good news.
We have an attorney in my office who does nothing but immigration work. Happy to connect you with him if that'd be helpful.
Okay, that's it could be very useful. We're now talking with the new investors that are coming in the round A to see us. The initial plan was 2023 for the US. We tried to be in 2022. But the question will be about how do we hire, how do we add the people for the initial start.
Okay.
Are you based in the south of France, Pascal?
Yeah, I'm based in next to Nîmes.
Okay.
Nîmes, and we have an office in Nîmes, and we have a second office in Tarascon, where we have a factory. If you go on Futura Gaia, you will see. You go on YouTube and search Futura Gaia, you will see a video with the 2 locations.
Okay, that's great, Ryan, because the people you invite are very close to my house in France.
Where's your house in France?
I'm located in Toulouse. I'm very often as well in Salon-Provence. So so not so far from Michael, as far as I understood, in Toulouse, and you're not so far.
If you're in Salon, you can come and visit us in Tarascon. It's very close.
Correct.
Okay. Anyway, it's great to have this meeting.
Pascal, I was going to add just one more final comment in terms of helping you to assess and compare some of the workforce and talent that we have here to where you are now and to maybe other markets in the US you're familiar with. We can provide support with that where you are now. And then if you were to come to North Carolina, we have a life science focused jobs board and deep connectivity with different talent acquisition groups, programs at our universities, and other avenues that we could help you to tap to find the type of talent that you're looking for, and then to plug into some of the training that BDA and Ryan were describing as well. So kind of along that full spectrum of where you are now and where you're going, there are lots of tools that we can help you to access.
Okay.
All right. Well, I believe our time is up, but if anyone has follow-up questions, you have our email addresses. Please feel free to reach out to us and we'll get right back to you. And we look forward to working with you. And we thank everybody for taking time out of your day to participate in our webinar. We appreciate it.
That was really great. Thank you, all of you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks all of you. Thanks, Ryan. See you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.